Okay, here we are. The expected talk with Camelia Elias from Denmark is here. We are together with Alejandro Lumiere. Alejandro, how are you?
I'm fine. Thanks for this opportunity to be here with you.
So
It's
what
an
are we
honor
going
for
to
me.
do? Yes, Camelia, nice to meet you. Nice to talk to you, and welcome to this planet of tarot in Spanish that now is going to be in English.
Thank you so much. I mean, I know, as I was saying in our first just 2 minutes here, um, I didn't realize it was the speaking people at some point who said to me, when are books going to be translated into Spanish? You know, and I was all like, translated that? Who the hell would want to read my work in translation? You know, I have a hard time already as it is. So, and then and I have any plans. And then they said, but you don't realize how many Spanish speaking people just love your books. And I was like, really? You know? And then more and more, and I thought, so thank you, Spanish speaking people, you know, for carrying the torch and for requesting translations. And I took that to my heart, you know, and maybe in the future I will consider, if translators come my way, I will consider it. I might actually, some approached me, but at the time, and it's a few years back, and I thought, I don't really have the energy to get all into all this, and I have too much work, and anyways, who's gonna read all that? But it seems like the Spanish speaking audience is growing, and it's resilient, and it's insistent. So, you know, one of these days, I hope that maybe some of the stuff will come out. So you said, do you have any books around? So some of the latest here, and I'm working on.
How many books do you have altogether?
Altogether, I mean, well, you know, it's a combination because while I was a professor at the University of Aalborg and also Roskilde, and before I retired, you know, for 10 years I was in Roskilde, so I was mandated, you know, to do academic research and all that, and then do those kind of books. So I have quite a few purely straight academic scholarly work. So I don't know, maybe 24 I have to date, but it combines, you know, so it's both my academic scholarly work, and then there is this, I wouldn't say that my tarot and divination work that looks at the practices of divination and folklore, yeah, they are devoid of the scholarly approach, because that's not how I think of my work, you know. And the same applies to my academic work. So it's all infused with what we make of the language of poetry, you know, how we can philosophize with semiotics beyond just the structural, you know, approaches that we have, or post-structures, or what we have all these names. Yeah. So I have always been interested in how just divination, or going back to the poetic voice, that at least, you know, when we look at anthropology, you know, it's all there. Just go and have a look at the cuneiform tablets, you know, all the way back to Mesopotamia. I mean, people never wrote about anything else other than predictions. The Babylonian tablets are just full of predictions, especially medical astrology and that kind of stuff, you know. What happens when you are depressed, you know, though they called it something else back then, you know, they call like your heart is not up to speaking. That would be the phrase they used. So you see, I would always be interested in my academic work, no matter what discipline would fall within, in this very aspect, you know, of what is it exactly that we refer to, or what we talk about when we talk about the so-called elevations of the soul, or when we talk about I don't know, you know, the metaphysics, you know, or an esoteric turn, or how we hear beyond, let's just say, our natural senses, or the ones that are known to us, you know. So I would always be interested in that. So, you know, so just to make a longer point about how many books, you know, so the more the books more oriented, you know, towards divination practices, there are about 10 in that category, and then the rest are in about on poetry and literary criticism. So but there is always this nerve that goes through both of these disciplines that some would definitely keep as separate because, hey, tarot, like, are you serious? As if, and here in Denmark, I mean, no one is free, right? So, I mean, you just don't you want to apply for funds. I mean, and I have experienced this myself, even when I sat in some research committees, right? So they say, so why, this is fascinating, all this stuff, the revival of the witches and the revival of the psychics and the revival, this and that revival, right? And it's very convenient for the academics now also to just snatch, a lot of all this fascinating discourses that go on in the occult world, right? But as soon as you have to apply for grants, for instance, with the academia, right? And I've been there myself, both at the assessing level and then also as a seeker, I applied myself for grants, So you simply cannot, So once I had, you cannot use the word tarot, I mean, like, you do that and you are out. So then there is a bit of a paradox because, mind you, we have here Christian professors who go to church every Sunday, and they also apply for funds, and they do their comparative religious, whatever the fuck, yeah. So they also apply for funds and they also have whatever, and somehow they always score them. But when it comes to our, to this part of the world, the occult, let's call it the occult, right? Then things are somehow like you are always subject to suspicion, let's be suspicious of this. So I remember with one of my colleagues, who's a big professor of Renaissance studies, so says, oh, yeah, this is perfect, so sometimes I share with him. I say, so this thing, yeah, but don't call it the tarot, just call it the human imagination. And I'm like, well, okay, thank you for your honesty. Like, call it the human. So, so I mean, why am I bringing this in? It's because these are some of the challenges, that we come up against when we try to navigate two different worlds. Now, as it happens, for me, I made the decision 3 years ago to retire from the academia. And if anybody is interested in, I simply say it like it is, it's just one of the dullest worlds, So for all the names and for all the time, like, okay, I got myself into this world because I thought it would be exciting, to talk to some illuminated heads. But then all you hear is just fear, to the point where, oh, you mean I can't even name my very exciting research proposal. I can't drop the word tarot because some assholes they are afraid. So, so I have to call it a human imagination. It's not incorrect to say that the tarot falls in that category. It is a human imagination because we all create all these systems of correspondences and this, and it goes across every discipline, from the hard sciences to do cultural studies into folklore, and all that anthropology, right? It goes through everything. So what are we talking about? But it goes to, it's like those pendulum just swings in very strange ways, And I got tired of my colleagues' fear, really, And a lot of people want to know, how did you do it, and why you left a good tenured professorship, and I had an excellent job. To become a fortune teller, are you serious? And I'm like, I'm dead serious. I'm like, I'm so serious, like you can't believe it. So they have it. So but at the basic premise, so to go back to the basic premise in my work, is actually just this, what is it that makes our minds tick in a particular way, So how do we respond, especially to language, because that's my area. And as far as my divination is concerned, and those who follow my work, and thank you for buying my books, or reading all the free stuff on the internet, you will see already, or you will have come across my insistence on looking at the ways, the modalities in which we talk, not only talk, because that would be just discourse, this is something that the academics love to look at and research into, but can we also hear ourselves? So there is just that one little extra step you have to take. And as soon as you put it that way, you realize that you come across all sorts of stuff that's very interesting. That's not a straight, academic, that doesn't disturb anybody. I'm not saying anything here that will subject you to any kind of suspicion. Yeah. I understand that you may be interested in the occult and what the witches are doing and what the tarotists are doing and what I don't know, but you are not practicing, are you? Actually, I also had some of my colleagues asking me, and then also they give me that look, like, they tilt their head and then they squint in a particular way, So it's like, you're not practicing. And I always feel like saying, and if I were, then what? You also go to church every Sunday. I mean, it sounds to me like you practice some form of Christianity. So, so or when you go to your yoga class, what are we talking about? So, the fact that most people, and especially in those circles where you'd expect that they are not that ignorant, you realize that the blind spot is like huge. And it's in places it's beyond the redemption, So I decided to just simply leave that world for all my navigating, So I got smarter. So I in places when I had to, I dropped the word, the trigger, now they talk about trigger words. So I dropped the trigger words and I played a nice role, and I decided that, no, my research was purely into human imagination. And, that didn't disturb anybody. But at the same time, you also just feel like, I'm too old for the shit, So if I want to call it the research into the tarot, and yes, I also practice it. Thank you. And I love it too. So any other objections? So, I have started now in my work. What I do actually, it's this, I feel almost like one of those queens in the tarot, like I'm being very dismissive, and you say, any other objections? Okay. Don't waste my time. And that's how I put everyone in place. Okay, I don't know what this is going, and what there wasn't even a question, but yeah. So this is one that combines divination with some practices of magic. Practices of magic with cards. It's one book that a lot of people found very fascinating and interesting, and maybe I should just show you just the main.
So
this one, a lot of people love.
With the first book you show is that you mix magic and oracles.
Yes. So this one, the oracle, yes, I'll hold it up again. The Oracle Travels Light, Principles of Magic with Cards. So here I look at yeah. Thank you, Alejandro.
Alejandro is the right one here.
Yeah, right. So I look at practices of divination as they relate to specific magical discourses, so I have quite a bit, I do cover a lot of ground here, from shamanism, from anthropology to necromancy. And I even in the process tell a few personal stories, so it's quite fun, and a lot of people kind of like this one because it bridges, from fortune telling or straight cartomancy and then onto what else we can also do with the cards, and it's like, and I'm sure in some in South America, or some places, I mean, this is not, I don't think this is a territory that's new. I think that in South America, a lot of people use the tarot as a necromantic tool, for instance, to get in contact or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. So, so maybe for those people, there is nothing new that I have to offer in my book, but there is always that other aspect that I bring to my work that informs my work. And in fact, this is also what I would insist is my original contribution to the cartomantic world, and that is that my insistence on how we go from deconstructing language, what do we say? And then what do we hear? That's the mystical part, because it's not a given that we hear, the right thing, if you like. And then how do we decode an image according to a set context, not a set symbolic associations, that can be quite arbitrary. So that's what I quite differ, if you like, from maybe a lot of approaches to the tarot, especially esoteric tarot, as it has been developed since the 60s. We have plenty of books that will just give you lists of meanings. So that's not how I read the tarot. I prefer to look at function first, and I hammer on the question. Without the question, there is no divination. I mean, sometimes I enter into quarrel, not anymore, because I got tired of being so conflictual. I got tired of being so martial, so I'm like, okay, you believe what you want, I'm kind of zen. I practice every day non-belief, so I can't participate in these redemptive crusades, or I have to say something to convince you of something else. I'm like, what the fuck, am I Jesus here, or am I an evangelist? I don't think so. I hate of that evangelist, so I mean, sorry for the Christian orient. So how we go from language deconstruction to how we go from image deconstruction to that space where we can safely say that we can associate with what others would also call being a psychic, being a psychic. I mean, this was the topic. I mean, so what do you want to talk about? And I said, I don't know, whatever you want. So, and then, but the psychic, I said, okay, I can say something about that. But, when we talk about being a psychic, at least according to the set definitions, meaning that you are a person who has clairvoyance or or can identify signals, if you like, let's call them signals. You can identify a code, if you like, that exceeds our normal, let's call them normal senses, So being a psychic, according to standard definitions, is all about this identification of these impulses, these impressions, this whatever you receive, right? Now, I have always had a problem with that, as I have a problem with many things in this world. Because, I'm thinking, this is all good, And why did I want to say it's the myth of being a psychic? Because a lot of people are so convinced, and they insist and say, listen, I'm not a psychic. You understand? They say, oh, you must be, because and then I have to give them the pep talk again, to the point where I sound again like some evangelist, or I'm on a rescuing mission, But why do I say I'm not a psychic? It's because if my so-called psychism stops there, to where I merely identify impressions, messages that exceed our normal sensual body, if you like, then what? I'm left there in the air, floating, and say, and speaking of Jesus, I see him descending here. You look into the crystal ball. I mean, I've experienced this myself, because I'm curious, and I go to see a lot of people, and then they say, I'm looking here, and I'm seeing, and I mean, I'm not making fun, this is a true situation, so, and I always take it to my heart when people say, I'm curious, and I say, okay, so what do you see? So they go, this angel figure or whatever. So people put on my table a lot of information, it's all about identifying information as it comes in. And sometimes it's visual, sometimes it's more sensual, like you feel it on your body, or you can hear things, or sometimes you see colors, or you sense a change in the temperature, it gets hot or it gets cold, and this can be exciting, right? So this is all about identifying the way in which information comes to you. Now,
okay,
while I find that that's interesting, I also think, then what?
Then what?
So you see, most psychics, they go like, well, it's a symbolic language. It is what it is. So when I come and say, well, it is what it is, I totally go the other way. I go the Zen masters, so the Zen Buddhists, So I'm like, for me, it's like it is what it is. It's the total void where we do not talk about even those impressions that are still informed or constituted by my ability to put it into linguistic terms, So if I couldn't describe my experience, even if it's just something that's intangible, it's just a feeling, people go, and it's like, I'm curious about this feeling. Oh, yes, yes. And and people can get very visual in their descriptions, but you see, that's when I hear, okay, so what you're telling me a story. Well, yeah, because I have to use words for it, right? So okay. So what I'm always looking for in the psychic thing, is how we process the information. You see, so this is where I depart from. I won't say most, because the psychics who have been doing this for a while, I'm sure that they understand exactly what I'm talking about. That without that processing of the information that you can identify coming through whatever channel, there is no knowledge, there is no wisdom, and there is no divination, you see. So others in the philosophical department, you know what they call this? Information plus process equals knowledge. They call it epistemology 101, So you see, in this sense, when we talk about the myth of psychic, when I said there is a myth of psychic, also some people say, oh, down in your family, and how was it? They all want to know about my family. And I also want to know about my family because I find it fascinating. For instance, I can even tell you a story. Can I tell you a story? So I'm jumping from one topic to another.
Please tell us the story. What's the story?
Now it just comes to me as an example that might be actually quite interesting for people to hear, because I never shared it before. So see, the Spanish speaking people, thank you. You get the first. So, but this thing with how we go and we try to find something about our own so-called psychic powers or the gift of divination or what we have. And we're happy when we can identify messages, we can identify information, but then don't stop there. If you ask me, if you want my advice, don't stop there. Try and process that. And for that processing, you need this thing here that's called your cognitive capacity. You need to be a detective. You need to hop on a completely different wagon than the intangible. You need to have a touchdown. You need to ground what you are receiving, So, but fascinating stuff, because, when I say I'm always myself interested in hearing how people experience being a psychic or being someone whom others are convinced you have the gift. Let's put it that way. So I can tell you the story, when mother, she was a Marxist, and I grew up as a Marxist, and I'm still a Marxist, even though I prefer the Zen, but still, as an ideology, I'm a total Marxist. I don't believe anything, not even in Marxism, but if we have to say something. So, but mother, she was a logician, and she liked to go to all sorts of churches because she thought, oh, this language, they use funny language, these people, So let's see what do they. So she would go from, speaking of the evangelists, she liked the Pentecostals, because they would speak in tongues and all the mystical experiences, And at some point, with one of these, the Jews in Romania, where I grew up, also there were 3 synagogues, So she would do the rounds from the evangelists to the Jews to the Lutherans. We also had a lot of Lutherans. So she said, let's hear these people. What language do they use? And then she used to drag me and my sister along, so we could have the pleasure of the experience, And that was an excellent introduction to the world of the mystic. Alcyone, you wanted to say, well, how did you become this mystic? And I'm like, I don't think anybody becomes anything. Everything is just default, I never think of any becoming, but there are stories, you see, and my personal story, there is this incident when mother once, I can't even remember what church she got into, and then they were on a mission, some of the people there, to go to the mental asylum, as a kind of a charity event, just to talk to some of those people and just as a relief, So they asked mother, said, would you like to come, to this, to see how it goes? And the mother, she was like, yes, absolutely. More people talking funny. Give them to me. Thank you. So I didn't go for this because, there are some regulations against it. This was the real mental asylum. So this is like serious, serious business. Yeah. But something funny happened, and I was like, I was so fascinated by that story. And also because it wasn't just mother who reported it, but also she was together with 3 men who used to be in the committee of this church. And then like high priest of sorts, right? and then they said, well, something very strange happened, so we went there. And then as soon as we stepped into the premise, like it was just quiet. And I don't know if you ever had the pleasure or maybe the horror of experiencing a mental asylum. I mean, it's never quiet. I mean, these days people figured out medication and all sorts, so they are all, in a daze, sadly. But on the other hand, maybe that is the preferred mode, who's to say? It's on my table to judge. But, the report went like this, that when they landed there, the place went quiet. So this happened once, and then it happened again twice. And then the third thing that happened was that the chief psychiatrist decided to offer mother a job. And then because he said, these people from the church, they come here every Sunday as part of the, and then they have a good singing with these people, and then, so it's nice. But whenever they come with you, there are some very, very strange things that happen. And then it's like everybody goes quiet, like grave silent, quiet. And then says, I don't know what the hell you do, but if you want a job, you can have it right now. Because it would be nice for a change to have some quiet here. And one of the things that and this was a medical professional in communist Romania, no beliefs. He was no church, an atheist, right? And then he said, it looks like all the demons, they just leave the place. And mother was like, she didn't know that she should feel flattered or something. Like, I wonder, should I feel flattered? Maybe I should feel flattered, right? But we talked about this incident, and it was interesting to hear also from the other men that say, yeah, when we go, this doesn't happen. But when she is there, it's like magic. It's like, you snap your fingers. It's like, where did they all go? Like, is this the female Solomon Pope or something? Banishing them. And mother, she was like, I swear I don't do anything. It's like, I swear I don't do anything. And the psychiatrist is like, I swear myself that you do. And if you want a job, you can have it. As it happened, mother wasn't interested in a job with a loony bin, so she didn't take him up on his offer. It was a nice offer though. But we did talk about that incident, and we like to speculate, on just what could we name that space of quiet, like that space of silence. And why is it that some people can institute or instill that silence, that calmness in a way? I think the psychiatrist identified that situation was that, like it's like some kind of calmness would descend upon the crazies, and no matter what kind of medication they would all be on, or what kind of schizophrenia. There are, mind you, a lot of Napoleon people. We used to laugh about that. It's not nice to laugh, but we used to laugh about that a bit, because later on I'm reminded sometimes when I have some marketers, I'm like, oh man, when they go like, I am Napoleon, I'm like, this reminds me of something, like last month I earned $1 million, and I'm so, the imperial, and so, like Trump style, right? And I'm like, yeah, this reminds me of something. And then I'm thinking of that incident, when mother would meet at least 5 Napoleons in the loony bin, all being convinced of their roles and their powers and their richness, except for the fact when they would also completely go quiet and they would say not a word, So what would be that space? So what would be that power that would create this, like out of nothing? So you see now, when people ask me, so are you a psychic or not? And I'm go like, Well, I don't know about me, but my mother was you know, or like, so you see, along those lines, we could say a lot of interesting things happen in the world, and they belong to that category that we cannot explain, So being a psychic also exceeds the plane of the explicable. We cannot explain everything, It's just a phenomenon, and you sit there and say, I have no idea. I'm clueless. I don't know how this happens, and yet it happens, right? However, for me, at least as far as I'm concerned, and on my part, when I go from receiving this type of information, then I always think, take it a step further. So I don't just leave it there. Yes, now a chill is in the room and nobody else can feel it, right? But because I am the psychic, I can feel it. And if I say it out loud and the 10 people are here, they all begin to feel. That's also called the power of suggestion. I always send people to read some Milton Erickson. You're going to be highly entertained on just what happens. So you see, so that can be both entertaining and sometimes also illuminating, because as a matter of fact, it can happen that a person, when he or she sits with 10 other people in the room, can experience a chill, or it's hot, like all of a sudden it's hot, or shifts in temperature, or I don't know, the visual, some people receive visual input. What do you do with all that? I always say, so what? So what? How do you process that? And in my own work, I'm always trying to tag this type of information that is received to some form of context. Without that context, I mean, I'm just being entertained because it's fun. Let's face it, it's kind of fun. Nobody else can feel the chill in the room. Oh, that's too bad. It's kind of fun. Oh, maybe not. It's just like a horror, right? So it's very entertaining. So we can also go with that aspect of it. But if we want this entertainment to hold some wisdom or hold some knowledge for us, then I would say that what is needed is exactly that dimension, the processual. You need to process what you identify as a message coming through whatever channel. Yeah. Without that, there is no wisdom. So, so that's my psych. That's the myth of the psych. But how we operate to that void, on how Mother made all these people go quiet, I have no idea. She died sadly more than 25 years ago. So I can't have that discussion with her. I wish I could. And then say, how is it when you went to the Luna? Yes.
Do you think that that's the reason why people make fun of psychics? Because it's exactly what you just described. We stay into the censoring, and then people say, oh yeah, now comes the psychic. And
Yes.
that's probably one of the mistakes.
Yes, exactly. I mean, it's actually a good question. I know it may come across as being rather rude, but I would say absolutely. I mean, and why? I'm not saying that. Let's put it this way: it depends on what you want to achieve. So if you are a psychic and you are talking to other psychics, then it's all fine to stop there at the impression, because like anybody else felt that chill, and then 5 others, I did. Okay, excellent. So we have a club, right? Or a cult or whatever. More power to us. Yeah. However, if you want to be credible, you will have to find a way in which you can navigate the world of the so-called rationals. So I'm not saying that the rationals are rationals. Actually, this is the opposite. Some of them are like, Lord have mercy, but they hide behind this label. Oh, we don't believe anything. We're rationals, and you just sit there in your sensorial world, and it doesn't go anywhere. So even though I would say most of those people are total ignorance, not to mention idiots, they would have a point here. They would have a point, because you sit there in your sensorial world, and then they will sound like me. And so what? What do you do with all that? So if you want to come across as more credible, you would always have to strive to make a point. Yeah. And making a point is not always a given, because you need a platform, you see. And when you're just up here operating with the total intangible, yeah, how are you going to deploy that to anchor that, to ground it, to land it, as it were, so that somebody can actually hear that? Can you hear that? Like touchdown, you know what I mean? That's needed. And when you do, when you achieve this, because you manage to make a point about it, like, see, the reason why this is happening, or the reason why the chill is in the room, is because we have a context on the table, or because somebody here has something on their mind, or there's something in the heart. There is a heaviness, or maybe there is joy. That can also be. So it's not always, don't always operate just with the depressed, although mainly that is the case. So so you cannot just leave it there. So you have to make an effort to take it a step further, as I said, so when, again, I'm always an advocate for checking with the dictionary. I always have a dictionary nearby myself, even words that we think we know what they mean. But if you were to go around and ask, even among our own peers, say, what is psychic to you? How do you define that? And then they would start talking about some experience that's personal, or, so it's like, okay, but what's the common definition? Because, for me, and I'm like, no, I'm not interested what for me. I'm interested in the common definition. You will be surprised how many would be completely unable to tell you what the consensus about the definition is. And that's how the problem starts. Now, go to Wikipedia and check psychic, and then you'll see how much smarter you get. And then you see what they stop, because the way in which the word psychic is defined is exactly along these lines of the situation when a person exceeds their so-called, natural powers, now either begins to hear, like when you are on drugs or something, and your conceptual perception, it's enlarged or whatever. So now we are there with something else that it's not even so explicable. So we identify the reception of some information, and then stop. And I'm like, okay, so that's all good. But you see, if you think a little bit, and say, okay, this is all good that we can experience this under certain circumstances. Some go through ordeals, some go through drugs, some go through fasting. They don't eat for 40 days. Jesus didn't eat for 40 days, so he could have some visions. People have all sorts of funny ways, Some go on a pilgrimage. Some sit in a cave for 9 years, was looking at the wall, so they can get some enlightenment. So people have done all sorts of funny things, So all very fine. So you receive all the stuff, but you're still left there with a nasty job that is called now to decode what has just happened here, and what is the purpose of all this. What is the purpose of all this? So I would say, if you want to be a good psychic, you receive all that you receive. No one is going to laugh at you if you tell them what the purpose of the shit is at the end of the day. And then you're like, oh.
So Camelia, Alejandro has a question.
Yes.
I have a question related with you are saying. When you talk about take the information to ground,
yes,
it's related with this reading tarot with like the devil. It's related with this.
Absolutely. Well, yes. Thank you for that. I forgot about my own. No, yes, this is that one that speaks, well, one of them that speaks of that, actually. What is not? Yes, the reading like the devil is in fact exactly that strategy, that takes the impulse, takes the visual cue from the cards, takes into account even what we know at the symbolic level that a particular set of cards or category, refers to or means. Yeah. We take that into account, and then we just pull it apart, and the reading like the devil involves this nasty question, like, how do you know that? How do you know what you know? That's the Zen part, so that's my own nastiness with the Zen, because, and especially in this world, it's like that. And you'll hear the occultists also, if there is something that really gets me going. It's like I read so many occultist books and all that, but one of the things that puts me off, and while I can appreciate even some of the rhetoric, it totally puts me off when I see that all of a sudden there is a mission, there is a cause, there is the apocalypse is coming now, and I mean at the end of December. Or, all this prophecy, the revelation is here now. And no, after our generation, nobody else comes. And I mean, I find such inherent great arrogance in these statements that really I cannot stand them. So what I'm always saying with the reading like the devil is that whether we rely on personal gnosis, a la occultist books, grimoires, magical recipes, or just cards, the tarot cards, which in a way can also be considered as a grimoire. It's just more malleable. You have to always ask yourself, how do you know this? What is the premise for your statement other than just sheer pathos? Polemics, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can fall for passion, man, but at the same time, I'm like, I'm too Zen for the crap, so I go like, so let's look at what is not in this statement, let's look at what is not the case. Yeah. What about when the hermit, as I discussed it here in the what is not, for instance, the hermit, how about the hermit is the sexiest person in the whole of the tarot? People come like, no, you can't mean that. We have the lover for that, or the charioteer, look how sexy. And then I'm like, no, it's that one, full of eros, so it's the hermit. And then people say, what are you talking about? Are you a madman? And I'm saying, maybe, because you see what I'm looking at is always the other side of the coin, where we start investigating again, what is love? What is eros? What is vitality? What is power? These are all some abstracts, how do we know what these things stand for? Who represents them? And then who decided also, who decided? These are all arbitrary conventions, you see. And then at the end of the day, when you look at their function, I'm like, okay, so I see, at least in my understanding, that this hermit, he's all about, he's my Bodhidharma, the representative of the Zen monk, who sits up there in a cave for nine years, you see. And what's the person? So you ask Bodhidharma, so you say, so what's the purpose of all this? Some Bodhidharma says, I just want to achieve peace of mind, and mental stability, speaking of, I don't want to be no Napoleon, So, and then I'm like, man, if somebody said that to me, I would say, you are hell of a sexy guy, If you tell me that what you're after is mental stability, I really cannot think of anything that's sexier. And then people go like, wow, oh, okay, I never thought about that one. I mean, if they put it that way, then I'm happy, because then I'm saying, yes, so somebody got, if not illuminated, at least got another perspective, So the reading like the devil is actually very much conjoined with the acceptance of the tradition, of what is there, what's the symbolism, what's the discourse, what's even the meaning. I did my own homework, and even though I'm like, gosh, how tedious, and I use it myself sometimes, but I never use it without just cause, without context, without having accounted for myself already, that what I'm saying actually falls within the category of that which we deem is either probable or plausible. I never operate with this, it is so. The Armageddon is here, and I decided. And you say, you decided because I'm Napoleon. I'm so passionate about my cause. Oh, okay. So if now, where is my pen? I would like to offer my mother a job like that psychiatrist, because we are actually right there with the world. And on occasion, when I read the cards, it's amazing how often I come across people who are like considered totally normal, right? And then they go this kind of language. And I'm like, ooh, so where should I take it now? From Zen or the psychic or the straight read like the devil? Because all of this, I mean, this person actually thinks that he or she is normal. And I'm like, you are so not okay. So how do you start a tarot session? By telling people, you are ready for the loony bin, or you are this close to it. The very little separates you from, from all the delusional. Yeah. So much of my work actually revolves around using the tarot to turn people's worlds a little bit upside down, or just to tweak them a little bit. So just open some doors, not too much, because then people get scared. And then they say, man, this one, she really is crazy. Right? Just open a little, because as I said, I'm no evangelist. I'm not on a rescue mission, and I'm not interested in missions. But I open a little bit, and then I point and say, man, maybe you want to look there. And then, if the person is curious, because curiosity is actually the condition for all knowledge. If the person is curious and walks that way, then they get to discover, that there is something perhaps more obvious than their own cultural preconditioning about a set of ideas or beliefs. Yeah. What was that?
Alejandro, what do you think about that?
It's amazing. I think I work in a common way, because I think curiosity is like a saint, no, the saint curiosity, because this is the way I think the tarot work. Maybe like I use it. Okay, I love it.
That's it. Yeah. But this is about to see a lot of people who don't know anything about this world, and that especially, the ignorance are always the fastest, on their guns. Let's shoot the tarotists. I mean, the crazy women, and I'm like, crazy women, give me 30 seconds of your life, and then and then we'll see who is more crazy. But I don't know. Let me see, because I'm looking at the clock. I have the cards with me, so why don't we just put on one of the things about also the tied to the reading like the devil, if you like, how you can check with yourself, with your own language. Sometimes one of the trick games that I like to pull on myself, is often to simply just say, do always look at the inverse of the situation, and if I'm dead certain, especially if I feel passionately about the thing, then, I want to start with a little bit like use a mirror. Often it's good also. Use a mirror, look at yourself, look at your face, how are your muscles going? Are you relaxed? Are you laughing soon? I hope you do, and then start shuffling your cards, and then pose a question that goes in the exact opposite of all that which you feel dead certain about. So it's a bit like, here is my big passionate balloon about this topic, and here is my big passionate balloon about this cause, and here is my big passionate balloon. There are so many passionate balloons. Yeah. So I use the cards, martial arts style. These are my swords. You see, 22 of them. So scissors. And I go there and I just a little prick, so just a little bit, and then I see the balloon, gets deflated, and then I put down 3 cards. And then I ask the cards and say, now, what do you think about this big hot air balloon that I'm so dead certain about? And then the cards are beautiful. They're going to give you a kick in your ass that, you will never forget. So, just for your own entertainment, try and pull this on yourself. And it can be about anything, about COVID and how you deal with that, about the conspiracy theories, about your love, about your children, like, oh, I love them. With my sister would have this sometimes. I trained her in this, and then I said, how about you ask the cards about how big this love is anyway? And he's like, oh, and then I said, oh, really? And I can't say this because, well, you don't have any children. I said, thank God, no, I don't. But, we can still pose some of these questions, about your love, and it's like, how big is this? Or what is this love? What does it consist of? Psychism also, am I a psychic? A lot of people want to ask these meta questions, am I a psychic? Really? I'm in doubt today. But the better question would be to how does this particular phenomena manifest in me? So that would elicit more information. Or how does love manifest for me? Or how does this inflated balloon evangelist apocalypse? how is this like for real? And for this, you do need the mirror because most people will not want to go there as a matter of course, because it's that's the irony, the blind spot. Like if you are dead certain, then obviously you have no cause ever to doubt what you're saying. But I can tell you the Napoleons that my mother met at the Looney Bin, they are also dead certain, you see. So that's the problem. So you don't want to go there. You will not want to be dead certain about anything. But so how do you make people go and knock on that door that they are convinced already that they don't have to, because we already know it is so. So the reading like the devil is all about what is not so. Let's take it from the other end. Use the cards for that. And you can throw the cards for any situation. And usually what I do, like 3 cards down, So now we talk about this topic, about how the Zen practice, in a way, this is Zen practice, how it relates to the myth that we also, and the myth, a lot of people want to not have that image of themselves touched, that, well, I do know what I know. And I think that's all fine. But if in order for that knowledge to also be useful to me, you still need to do the job of anchoring it into some platform and showing me your process. Without that, it'll just be that information that I sit here and I try to imagine what you are seeing and all these clouds and wings and dark rooms and a pool of water and snakes. And, and I'm like, oh, wow, yeah, people go, oh, wow, yeah. So how did you feel about it? Oh, yeah. No, yeah, the clouds, yeah, I like the wings. No, the snakes, I didn't like that so much. No, did you? No, that's also bad. So something bad is happening? I think so. I mean, we can have these conversations. So, and again, I'm not laughing at anyone. I'm actually serious, yeah. Because it's not my table to judge, people's practices. But you want to know how you are taken seriously. You take all that stuff and then turn it into knowledge. And one way in which you can do it is to process.
Camelia, can
Yes.
can we have an example with the
Yeah.
with the devil? Is it possible for people who are like freaking out about this next year and COVID and all this uncertainty? Or do we have to make like a specific question?
Well, it's better always for the read like the devil to have a specific question. So if you have a specific question.
Okay, so my question would be, what's my 46th birthday going to be? Like, what's the next year for me? Because I'm going to be soon having my birthday. So go ahead. I'm ready.
So I mean, you want
Alejandro.
to. Okay, so Okay, this
You
is
are
a this
you
is
are
a,
naked
this,
now. You are naked now.
I know.
yeah. But this
On
this is
YouTube.
this is a general question. Yeah, it's very general. So there is always a kind of a problem with the general, because you know, it's like what. But you want to know how your
So
next.
what's the thing I have to work? What's my mission? What's the theme around next year?
Yes. Okay, that's more concrete. Because it can be so many things, you know. I say, I wonder how my year is gonna be. And I'm like, okay, so are you interested in traveling? Yes, maybe you'll go to Bora Bora, maybe you'll buy a new house, maybe you're gonna get a divorce, or I mean, you know, it's like, which one, and will this be good or will this be bad? So it's always best to simply just narrow it down and narrow it down. You can never narrow it down enough, you know.
Okay.
So even with a job, sometimes I want, people ask me, you know, when they book readings with me, and I says, I want to know something about how my work will be in the next 3 months. And then I'm like, can you be more specific? And then they don't understand what I mean. And I say, well, tell me something, give me some context, tell me something about your work. Are you a rocket scientist? Are you a carpenter? It makes a difference, you know. So the cards will address the situation in a much more precise manner if we have a specific context on the table. So, you know, so the reading like the devil, so can we have an example? So thank you for that general question, because, you know, I can throw it at you and say, you are not being specific enough. So therefore, you know, I cannot deliver a read like the devil reading without that. But if you have something like, I want to know something about my specific work. So now your work is what?
No, my inner
What
work
area?
in terms, I think inner work in terms of fixing my lineage. With Alejandro, we're doing the tree of our ancestors and all the stuff that we have to just look and take charge. So specifically that, my inner work.
Yes. Well, see, already now it's becoming very interesting, because in my head I thought it was just some kind of work, like office work, you know. So I know it, or work with the cards. So there you have it. So let's see. You know, I'll just put the cards down and then see maybe what the cards suggest. Are you interested in a descriptive narrative, or are you interested in a prescriptive narrative? That is to say, do you want advice, like what should I do?
Yeah.
What is the best step to take? Because, yes, you know, if you just say, how is my work, then just the description, and again, the description is often more general than the stuff that will give you something to think about. So if you ask,
let's go deeper, something to think about.
Okay, something to think about, because then, you know, it's like I can ask the question, turn it around and say, okay, what's the best step, you know, to take in order to maybe have this inner work develop in a beneficial way, you know. Right. So you can see how you can always use language, some words, okay, to concretize. So let me see. And this is something about lineage, you said. Yes. An ancestral work, yeah. Okay, so you got these 3 cards. The first one is the Judgment. This is the Marseille Tarot, the Jean Noblet from 1650, as reconstructed by Jean-Claude Florna from France. So, Judgment, Jugement, la roue de fortune, so the wheel of fortune, and le chariot, so the charioteer. Okay, so it sounds to me like you already raised the dead. So I would say, this being about the inner work about the ancestors, you know, look at this card specifically. It tells you that this is what you have started. So the channel is open. Yeah. So the channel is open, big style. Now, what's the next step if you want to be successful? Like, you know, let's put it that way. Why not? This is interesting because now you raise the dead, you got in contact, you know, so there is an open channel here. I would say definitely with Le Jugement, you have 3 people rising from the graves, you know, the clarion, you know, the angel already trumpeted the message. It's like, he hear all, and now you're listening. Yeah. So, but at the level of the concreteness of the thing, the job, if you still need to do something, is like heed attention, pay attention, hear, more than thinking that, oh, wow, here. Yeah, here. Although you're going to hear this because it's loud enough, but still, stay tuned. Stay tuned. Now, however, at the level of action, this is funny because here you're not in control. It's like it's going up and down, up and down. We don't even know who's turning the wheel. Yeah, maybe he is turning the wheel. We don't know that. Some would say, yeah, he's turning the wheel. Yeah, we don't know that. maybe not. So meanwhile, however, you know, what is the, that's why I asked you, do you want just a description or do you want some advice? You know, how should you, what attitude to have in this work now that the channel is open? This one directly, I would say, this one tells you to relax, you know, to not do too many things. This is the flow card. You have to go with the flow, you know, you have to go with what presents itself to you, you know. However, you have to also take this into account that you will experience this loss of agency, yeah, because everyone is caught here, and depending on how fast this turns, these two cards are fast cards. Traditionally speaking, they are fast, they are not slow. So we can infer that if this one here is sandwiched between two fast cards, this wheel, if it goes very fast, you're going to get dizzy. So the thing is that you can't do much about it because you're caught here. So the contact has been made, but you're also at the same time caught in this. So it's like you are now in the grips of this wheel. You became a cog in the wheel, as it were. So the best advice is that you must not resist what goes like this, and however fast or slow, but here, because of these two flanking cards that are fast, I say it goes fairly fast. So be prepared to maybe just close your eyes, still listen. Yeah, listen, we are still listen, and then not do anything else. So we are not here with the emperor or with the empress, or, you know, some of the other action cards, you know. So just close your eyes tight, you know, and go with the flow. Sit tight. You can even have a firm grip on this, unless of course you want to get out of it, in which case you need a different kind of force to catapult yourself out, you know. However, if you can manage to go with the spinning wheel, yeah, then you will get a sense of accomplishment. You will get a sense of the direction that your work needs to take, because the charioteer is going somewhere. Yeah. And often he's going towards some goal that encompasses success, or, you know, something similar. Yeah, he has a purpose. So what I would say, to answer your question concretely, you open the channel, you raise the dead, don't do too much, but hang in tight. And if you get dizzy, don't despair, but you will feel this loss of agency, loss of power, yeah, because you're not in control here. You will feel that, yeah. At the same time, if you can hang in there in the spinning, you will actually come out of it with a clear vision and a sense of direction and purpose. Okay.
Wow, thank you.
That's it. But I'm not saying anything other than just stating the obvious.
Magically.
Yeah, that's the reading, like you just read the obvious and you think a little bit about the question. Without the question, see, if I didn't ask you specifically, I could have just shot in, I don't know, 20 directions and be a nice psychic. Okay. Who receives messages but not process anything, because it's difficult to process something that has no premise, you see. So that's why I always make sure you have a clear question on the table. Yes, Alejandro, I keep talking. Yes.
This reading magically answered to my question. Another question, but when I was listening to you, I understand my own process.
Yes.
I can tell you my answer if you want, and you can maybe do the magic. with this. My question was about fear. I was feeling fear this day, and I want to know why I feel fear and how can I do with it, and then what? Okay.
Yes,
And
and
this card talk to me.
yes, and then what? Yeah. Well, that's a good question. Well, you know, if you did this work together, and then yeah, raising the dead is a powerful thing, you know. So it's, I mean, it's not it's a powerful thing, and often even in shamanic circles, people say you have to be prepared, you have to be ready. You know, don't go there if you don't think. But of course, people don't know what's there, and they go there, and then they are spooked. You know, that they freak out. However, you know, these three cards, if you did the work together, then it's like, here is all you need to do is not exercise any agency because you don't have any. So that would be a waste of effort and a waste of energy of your own kind, you know, of your own breath. Don't do that. So just sit tight, you know. So even if you thought, in a way, like you said, I'm fearful of this, so but just sit tight, you know, and then you, when you get clarity in the head, you see. That's always my aim with the cards, with Zen, with whatever. I just want to be clear in the head. I'm not interested in anything else. When you get clear in the head and when you have a very clear vision and directions, you know, where am I going? Whether in my speech, whether in my books, whether in my ancestral work or lineage or whatever, you know, doesn't matter. Where am I going? When you have that vision, then you will see that just that alone will dissolve all fears, because what's there to fear anyway? So often fear comes as a result, in fact, of exactly this lack of vision. You know why the one card that so many people actually love, the devil himself, you know, I always say, don't get too excited. You know, the card of the devil, when you get it, it always spells out one thing: lack of vision. Why do you think there's so many eyes on the devil body and here and here and everywhere? Huh? Because there is vision like hell. No, I mean, when you go to hell or to the underground, underworld, the dark places, the chthonic, you know, people are so enamored of the shadow work, you know. I mean, sorry if I offend somebody, but I mean, like, I don't get the stock, you know. Oh, it's so exciting to me. The only exciting thing is this, you know, to be clear in the head, you know, have mental stability. That's the sexy part, you know. The mental stability, that's the sexy part. So this is the thing, like, go here and go there, and it's like we're so fearful. It's like what I always say to people: get clear in the head, because the moment you have that clarity, there is no fear anymore. That's it. Okay, so
you see how we're over an hour talking?
Yes, I know, I'm terrible. Yeah, I never finish. You can ask my students, you know. I always try to cut myself.
No, we're enjoying this. Alejandro, do you have any questions?
But you know, I can just very quickly do Alejandro's cards for fear, just for fun.
Okay, Alejandro.
But then we closed it. So
Thank
let
you.
me see. Let's see. No, so how funny. So the card of fear came down as the first. So what else is new? It's nice of the cards to just, you know, I must be a psychic, don't you think? Or something. So I have the gift. Yes, I have the gift. So that's why the cards come like this. So the card, I'm serious. I mean, I know I can see you laughing, but I'm serious. So the moon is not a body of clarity. I mean, depending on the work we need to do. Speaking of, if you have to do shadow work that others so love, I mean, I don't get that talk, but I get the work that others, and I take seriously what people are interested in. So, you know, if that is the kind of work, then the moon is good news, you know, because it gives you an opportunity, or at least it validates what you are about, you know, and say, today I want to confront my fears. If you get the card of the moon, you say, yay, I'm on a roll. However, if this is not about that kind of work, then I would be very worried about this, because this is not a card of clarity. And if you want to achieve any clarity in your work, then this one here, do anything like vanquish it, like spit on it and throw it out. So, you know, like, you don't want that in your life, because it's the moon has no light of its own. It only reflects the light of the sun. When it's dark, you see goddamn nothing. When it's full, it's beautiful, but you also see all sorts of other things that are not exactly real. So, you can't trust this one. Fear, creepiness, it's dark, I mean, I would almost want to say it's a natural response, to darkness, that we go to that place, um, we are beyond the verbal. Even if you want to explain to me how your fear looks like, smells like, uh, tastes like, you'll have a problem with that, because you can't. We are here with the dogs, howling, and we're not with rational verbalization of what we think. So it's just some emotions. People like to associate this card with emotion. So yeah, so your fears are here. But it looks like well, it's good that these two dogs turn into two horses. So at least they can get somewhere under somebody's control. Here the dogs are out in the wild. Nobody controls nobody. Yeah. But here, if we have by the law of some sort of transference, let's do a nasty thing. Two dogs turn into two horses, and then the crayfish here finally rises. That's you. So so here you are more confident. So that means that your fear gets conquered. This is also the card of the conqueror. You see, when the charioteer returns from war, then the crowds, they cheer for him. Watch some of those Hollywood movies from the 50s, Ben-Hur and all that. You'll get the image, right? So here we talk about overcoming this fear. So whatever work you're doing now, it leads to this. So you're safe. The dogs will not have eaten you, alive. So you're safe. Yeah. And then look at that, and how nice, there is an empress there waiting for you. So is this your partner in this crime lineage work, or maybe it can be your lover, or it can be your mother, So that's up for that's up for you to decide. But there is anyway a woman of power, who is also at your back, as it were, or she's also, after you conquer and say sayonara, goodbye to this fear, you see, you are still looking back. She is there waiting for you, sitting on her throne with her own powers. And good news for you. Good news. So don't be fearful. Just get clear in your head about that direction. See, the charioteer came twice here, and I don't know if you noticed. That's another thing about it, like the devil. Pay attention to everything. If you know, I've been sitting here while you are talking, shuffling. So I've been shuffling and shuffling, and you see, between the two readings, the charioteer came twice. So there is a reason for that. Yeah. Or we can just say it and call it a nice coincidence. A nice coincidence. And the moon related directly to the question. That's also a nice validation of the fact that indeed, Alcyone, you said, why read the tarot? That's why. Because it's nice to see how when we sit with whatever it is, in our minds, in our hearts, sometimes the first card down validates exactly that issue. And you sit there and say, oh, how mysterious, and I would say, yeah, well, the moon can mean so many things. So seeing the read like the devil, no, it can only mean one thing. And I can only mean one thing because I only had one thing in my head, not 20, one. And I can make that relation 1-to-1. And I can even point to this card being my strong evidence, for the fact that there is validation on the table. And you go and pull that on your clients, and then you'll see how for how long they're going to think that you are crazy and that you are a con person, or whatever, the repertoire of just how bad the fortune teller's reputation is has no end. But ultimately it doesn't matter. You just put the cards down and then look at them in a spontaneous way. See, go for the obvious. Don't go for what you heard is a meaning, is a symbolism, is a, you don't need all that. What you need, however, is to get clear on the question and then get clear on how the cards relate exactly to that question. That's the art. So, and with these words,
thank you very much. Thank you.
But I leave you to this then. Thank you so much for this. This was fun.
It was amazing. Thank you, Camelia. I hope we meet again, and you're more than welcome to share your knowledge anytime you want. We can translate with Alejandro if you want to see your fans in Spanish-speaking countries.
Well, you know, I've been taken aback by the response, and I was very pleasantly surprised, you know, that I didn't think that, you know, when you don't write in that language, and yet there's so many, you know, so for the Spanish speaking people, if they listen to this, I really truly thank you from my heart, you know, for making an effort, because it's not easy, you know. I mean, speaking English is my mother tongue, you know, Danish is my mother tongue, you know, and you know, now I have to navigate into all these other languages, and I know it's not easy, you know, but when you can make an effort, right? That's something to be appreciated, and I always appreciate it as an extra, precisely because, you know, I've had my own experiences as a foreigner in several countries, you know, and then I know just what kind of energy it takes. So thank you so much for all your interest and for your cheering and support.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Camelia, for this present.